This is Glass City Humanist, a show about humanism, humanist values, by a humanist. Here is your host, Douglas Berger.
In this episode, our guest is poet Megan Rahm. We discuss her book of poetry, Free to Roam, Poems from a Heathen Mommy, and her journey to freethought. She not only shares some selections from the book, but also talks about her mental health struggles, her chosen art form, and her upcoming memoir.
Glass City Humanist is an outreach project of the secular humanists of Western Lake Erie, building community through compassion and reason for a better tomorrow.
With us today is Megan Rahm. She recently published a book of poetry titled Poems and Tales from a Heathen Mommy. She is the knew I was going to blow that. Megan is a Midwest mom, but also is very passionate atheist. From her childhood in rural Ohio to her present-day life in Toledo, she tells her story of struggles and triumphs through poetry. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Megan.
Thank you so much. I have to do a little correction, though. The title of the book is actually Free to Roam, Poems from a Heathen Mommy.
Oh. That's okay. I'll make sure I have it right when I do the show notes and everything.
Okay.
All right. And like I said, thank you for joining us. And basically, how did you become an atheist? Was it a long process, or was there a single factor that tipped you over to free thought?
Well, growing up, I was never religious. My family's not that religious. I think my parents would probably call themselves Christian, but we weren't churchgoers or anything. I kind of rebelled growing up against the more conservative people, from back home. The one thing that really kind of set me off, I have a mental illness called schizoaffective disorder, and sometimes I experience psychosis, where I have auditory and visual hallucinations. And when I had these hallucinations, I thought they were spirits or ghosts. So even though I wasn't religious, I had this belief in spirits. And then finally, when I was 21, I got treatment, and I started taking antipsychotic medications. And with the medications, the hallucinations, the spirits, they went away. And so from that point on, I knew if the spirits weren't real, then God wasn't real either. And I was an atheist from that day on.
And did you grow up in a religious household, in a religious community?
No, my family's not very religious, but people from the area are pretty conservative. I grew up out in Henry County.
Oh yeah, Henry County.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very conservative, religious. Yeah. I'm familiar with them. And how did you start writing? What gave you the start?
It's kind of funny because when I was younger, I had a teacher who kept trying to push me into writing. And I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be an artist and a musician. And so it was actually just something more recently that I discovered that I really enjoy writing. I first started writing for a mental health website. I do an article every other week, and I really enjoyed it. It was like my first writing job. And from there, I started writing for freethoughtblogs.com. My blog there is called From the Ashes of Faith, and I love writing for them as well. And then the poetry, actually a couple years ago, I took a class at VGSU on poetry, and I loved it, and that's when I started writing Free to Roam. So really, writing for me is, just in the past several years, it's kind of recent for me.
And was the poetry your first medium for writing, or did you start with short stories, or?
Mostly just articles, mental health articles.
You've been pretty public or pretty out there that you've had mental health struggles in the past. And does that play into what you write? Is it something that helps you write? and get you going, and how to when you're doing it?
Well, my mental health struggles are very, they're a big part of my life. So I definitely write about them a lot. Sometimes writing about them can be difficult, though. It can be kind of triggering. The memoir I'm working on, I did have a hard time with that. But yeah, it definitely inspires me. It gives me a lot of ideas.
All right. And how about if you share some of your poems? Um, the one that I liked and my fiance liked was Baptism. Could you share that with us?
Absolutely. Every innocent baby is born tainted, new to the world, but on a direct path to hell. A cold splash of submission, followed by pictures and cake, saves their blank slate souls and fulfills a family societal duty. The child has been marked for indoctrination, brainwashing, and conformity, a fresh young mind donning chains and shackles. Water should just be water and a meaningless ceremony, but it becomes a deadly weapon recruiting for a dangerous army. Let the well dry up. Let the children go free. Let's defeat the army that has imprisoned us all.
And how did that poem come about? What were you trying to articulate in writing that?
This actually made me think of my own daughter. Um, my daughter is 5 now, but when she was born, we did have a relative that kind of fought with us on getting her baptized. Of course, my husband and I weren't going to do that. Um, I don't like what it symbolizes. I feel like children should be free to just explore and make their own opinions about the world, and baptism is just the start of indoctrination, and I think it's dangerous.
You said that you had debates or arguments with somebody that wanted your daughter baptized. Uh, I know for some people who are not religious, they do have a lot of debates with family members concerning how the religious upbringing of children. Do you still get a lot of that today, or they pretty much know that that's not going to happen?
Not at all. Not at all today. That one family member, she was older and she passed away a few years ago, and no one else in our family seems to mind. So, so it's
Yeah,
good.
I was at Christmas one time, and I had the Columbus group that I was in. I had their T-shirt on, and she saw it. She says, "Are you a heathen?" And I said, "Well, I guess." She says, "Does that mean you can't celebrate Christmas?" And I said, "I'm here." So yeah, people have their preconceived notions, and
Yeah,
and they get involved with that, and it can cause problems. So
yeah.
For more information about the topics in this episode, including links used, please visit the episode page at glasscityhumanist.show.
The other one of the other poems that I liked was "Girl Mom," and I was wondering if you'd be able to share some of that with us.
Absolutely. Now, this was my husband's favorite poem out of the book, and he really helped me out when I was writing this because I wrote all of this during the pandemic, and obviously the writers groups at the library that I go to are all canceled. So he was the one reading all of my poems for this book. It was my husband was reading it, and his coworkers were reading it too. But this was his favorite. So, okay, this is Girl Mom. How do I protect my daughter from having the stories all women have, from fearing the night and walking alone? How do I protect my daughter when rapists run for president, when boys will be boys, when accusation is too frequently overlooked? How do I protect my daughter when she doesn't have a say, when her body is property and legislation dictates her future? How do I protect my daughter from 78 cents to the dollar, from taxes that come in pink, from old and rotten expectations? How do I protect my daughter from the shards of glass when she destroys the glass ceiling and leads the way in a man's world? How do I support my daughter when she no longer needs my protection?
And so that was the pandemic speaking. Is that how you came about with that poem, or was there a specific incident?
It wasn't, I can't think of anything specific, but, just in the last few years with the Me Too movement, it was definitely on my mind. And, just having a little girl, like, oh, the world's kind of a dangerous place, and I worry about her.
And when you are coming up with these poems, do you ground them more in real situations, or are you able to also talk about esoteric or abstract things? I mean, which works better for you, the concrete or the abstract?
I do a little of both, honestly. I think the poems in this book were a little more grounded. A lot of them, especially the poems I write about being a mom, those are all things that I've experienced firsthand, and that's what a lot of this book was. There's a few poems in here that were just more artsy and abstract, but most of it's more grounded.
And then the other one that I was interested in particular was the no public displays of atheism.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you could share that with us.
Yeah. You wear a cross on your necklace, cold and shiny, close to you, for everyone to see. Your beliefs lead you, define you publicly. You assume I'm like you, but I'm not. I keep my thoughts to myself, fearing ridicule and discrimination. My views aren't on display, but I'm proud of who I am, just sick of hiding in the shadows.
And how did that poem come about? Any particular incident or?
Yeah, it kind of made me think of my coworkers. I do have a part-time job working for a nonprofit here in Toledo, and a lot of my coworkers are more religious, and they're not afraid to express that. And I mean, anywhere you go though, you see, people wearing cross necklaces, and it's really common, and it's just, it kind of makes me mad that they're so free and open to do that. No one's going to say anything, But if I were to do something like that or talk about my atheism, like, I fear losing my job,
Yeah, I actually had that happen to me at a job I worked at.
Oh, wow.
This one woman was really into religion, and we had these cubicles set up that we worked at, and she had all this iconography on there, Jesus statues and pictures and Bible quotes and just a whole mess of stuff. So I brought in a bunch of humanist stuff and put up on my cubicle. She complained about me to the manager, saying that I was making her feel uncomfortable with my religious display.
Oh my God.
And so he had to explain to her that it was in the employee handbook that religion was supposed to stay at home anyway. So we both had to clean out our cubicles.
Good.
So she had to put her stuff away and I had to put my stuff away. She was not happy about that at all. Because she was privileged. She thought that her stuff was okay and that she could get my stuff thrown out. And it's like, nope.
Yeah.
And then the other poem too that I wanted wanted you to share was the it seemed pretty personal. My scars, my story.
My curls screamed as they were straightened. My songs were stripped from my lungs. Fresh freedom was depleted when I gasped. Shackles of indoctrination imprisoned my peers. I was alone. Time was never on my side in that small, tired town. Even when I left, cruel judgment branded a lasting impression. Scars that are just part of my story that I'll finish in my own words.
And so I'm assuming that was autobiographical, or
Yeah.
so there was a particular incident that led you to write that.
I wouldn't say one particular incident, but just growing up in a conservative area. Um, the first couple lines, my curls screamed as they were straightened. I mean, you can't tell my hair is curly today because I have it pulled back. But you know, when I was younger, I remember always trying to straighten my hair. I always wanted my hair to be straight. My hair is not straight naturally. But you know, that's how all the other girls had their hair, and just little things like that. I just didn't feel like I could be myself there.
And so you lived in a small town or near a small town?
Near a small town, yeah.
Yeah, and it always amazes me because my family's from a small town, my grandparents and aunts and uncles, and it's always amazing how much they know about other people's business.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like if you're a kid and you get out of line, you're pretty sure that your grandma's going to hear about it because Joe Schmo at the corner saw it happen and told her about it. So
that's so
yeah.
true. You know, I lived outside of Napoleon, and you know that's where that big Campbell soup factory is. Mm-hmm. And my dad worked there along with everybody else's parents. You know, so I mean everybody knew my dad. So I mean I could walk down the street and they wouldn't know my name, but they'd be like, "Oh, you're Dan's girl." You know? I couldn't get away with anything.
No, not in those small towns. You can't. No.
This is Glass City Humanist.
One of the things that you're doing now is you're working on a memoir. Will it be the same or different than your poetry? Is it going to be more narrative than poetry?
It is. It's actually a little of both. It's mostly narrative. When I first started writing it, it was kind of like a series of essays about different symptoms or experiences I had had. But I actually started including poetry in it too. There's about 20 some poets or poems in it right now. But like now, we've gone through a couple rounds of edits, and it's not really a series of essays anymore. It's kind of grouped by illnesses. Like I struggle with an eating disorder as well as schizoaffective disorder. So everything on the book starts out with the eating disorder, but it's also kind of in a chronological order as well.
And are you worried about being that open about your personal issues? Are you worried about? I mean, does it bother you that people are going to read it and maybe judge you for what's going on, or?
I don't worry about it too much. I actually, I'm a certified peer supporter, so I'm pretty open about my my struggles anyway at my job. But I feel like it needs to be said, honestly. I think people need to be honest about mental illness, and especially with me having schizoaffective disorder, like having a schizophrenic disorder, like that comes with a lot of stigma. So I really wanted to tell my story. I want people to know what it's really like. I want them to know that I'm doing well too. I can live with this illness and do all sorts of things,
And what would you say to people who don't think atheists can create works of art because we don't have a religion?
That's kind of silly.
Yeah, it sounds silly, but there's some people that believe that.
Well, I mean, I feel like I just get inspiration from just life itself. I'm also an artist. I love to draw. A lot of the hallucinations I've had because of schizoaffective disorder, I draw my hallucinations. And just, I draw things related to motherhood. I get inspiration just from life itself. You don't need spirituality or religion to, draw inspiration for things.
And what is in the future for you and your writing after you finish your memoirs? Have you thought that far ahead?
Yes, actually. More poetry. I'm actually working on an erotic poetry book right now, which has just been an absolute blast to write. I'm still, kind of in, well, I wouldn't say beginning stages, but, I haven't really found a publisher, or, I'm not working with anybody on it right now. I'm just kind of still writing it. But it really has been a blast. It's a lot of fun.
And the interesting thing too that when you talked to our group earlier, you say that you write a lot of times at the library.
Yeah.
you rent or you schedule a study room and do that. And you said that helps a lot, right? Because it focuses you on the writing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I still do that every week. I'm in a room there, sometimes twice a week. I love the libraries in Toledo. They're amazing. I mean, because I not only, reserve rooms to write in, but, I take my daughter to the library. I've gotten job training at the library. I mean, it's just, the libraries are amazing in Toledo. But yeah, it definitely helps to just, sit by yourself in that room in the quiet. And I really, the days I go to the library are the days I get the most done.
Okay, and as we kind of wind down the interview here, I like to give people opportunity to plug their stuff and tell us anything else that you might want us to know that you haven't told us already. So go ahead.
Oh, gosh.
No pressure.
I'm not sure. I mean, we talked about Free to Roam. Free to Roam's really special to me because I feel like that really started something special for me. It's my first book, my first poetry book. I'm just trying to grow from there, with the memoir and the erotic poetry book. And I have ideas for other books I want to get started on. I want to continue writing about atheism and mental health. I don't know. I feel like I have a lot going on and I'm really excited about it. And
people can pick up your book through the regular booksellers online. Can they order them at the brick and mortar bookstores, or are they there? Or
I don't know if you can get it at an actual bookstore. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and then you can also go to my publisher's website, freethought.com. You can get it on there as well. If you go to my publisher's website, you can get a signed copy.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for your time, and really appreciate you stopping by and talking with us. And also, I want to let people know that we do have a video of your talk at our group meeting back in October, or was it October? Yeah, it was October.
October, yeah.
I forget what month it is sometimes. So check that out too if you want to hear more from Megan. And again, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. For information about the topics in this episode, please visit the episode page at glasscityhumanist.show. Glass City Humanist is an outreach of the secular humanists of Western Lake Erie and is supported in part by a grant by the American Humanist Association. The AHA can be reached at americanhumanist.org. Sholey can be reached at humanists.wle.org. Glass City Humanist is hosted, written, and produced by Douglas Berger, and he is solely responsible for the content. Our theme music is Glass City Jam, composed using the Amplify Studio. See you next time.